Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for joining us for our third webinar over IEPs. Today's topics is the third in our series. We will be discussing the overall kind of the special needs and special factors tab. But in that, we will discuss the objective statement, strengths, educational needs, and special factors along with parent concerns. By the way, I'm Shawna Keene. I work at the State Department, and hello to all you guys. In Ed Plan, all of those things we're going to cover today are in the third tab. So that's where we'll be most of all this morning on this session. The first one we're going to talk about is the overall objective statement. And I put this roadmap up here. I like to say that the objective statement's the roadmap. It kind of shows you and tells you everything you need to know about that student. It sets the tone for the IEP. This should be used to paint a clear picture of the student, their strengths, their weaknesses, anything that would help somebody understand that student. I try to stay away from always using negative terms in my IEP or in my overall objective statements. We don't want it to be negative. Remember, you are talking about someone's student and child, and so we want to be mindful for that. If you do have to have some, maybe not negative statements, but statements, make sure you're adding positive as well. In Ed Plan, this is what it looks like. And remember, it's not just a statement. You can write as much as you want in that. The box will expand. I'm not saying you have to write a dissertation, but you just want to make sure you have given all the information in there. Sometimes we see Sally is a third grader. She struggles in reading. That's fabulous, but how does she struggle in reading? Is it the reading comprehension? Is it the fluency? Where is she struggling? So you just want to make sure you're being very specific. We also see this. Sally is a fabulous third grader, but now Sally's in 8th grade. So make sure you guys are going back annually and updating that objective statement. Make sure you're checking to see. Also, make sure you have the right child's name in the overall objective statement because we've seen that as well. On this is just kind of a reminder of some things you might want to go over when you're writing an objective statement for a student. I'm not saying every time you have to absolutely answer every one of these questions, but it's a good place to start. You know, how does the student's disability affect the involvement or functional performance and progress in the general curriculum? Describe the student. If you have a student who maybe is having behavior issues, you don't want to start out, you know, Johnny is very violent and will hit. You kind of want to prepare that. Let's give them something more to look at. Maybe he is a very active third grader. Maybe you put in the results of the most recent evaluation, something of his strength. You know, he scored a 21 on the ACT. You might want to put your post-secondary interest. Johnny wants to be a welder when he grows older. Grows up. He wants to own his own shop. And for your preschool students, maybe how the child's disability affects the participation in appropriate activities. Any of those or all of those are a good place to start when you're writing your overall objective statement. Moving on down, you'll see describe the student's strengths. On this, we know that every child in the state of Oklahoma, their strength is always parental support and attendance. I'm not saying that's bad, but let's be a little more specific. I've been in education a while, and I see that more often then I see what is the true strength of that student. So you want to document, maybe you use the evaluation from his eligibility, maybe some re-eval data, maybe something from his STAR reading, STAR math, DIBELS, Literacy First, anything that you use. Maybe you can pull the strengths. So maybe I see Sally for reading, but she's fairly good in math. Maybe she's very good in math facts. So make sure you're actually documenting the student's strengths. Let's be more considerate and use more meaningful words that pertain to each student than attendance and parental support. I'm not saying those are bad. I'm not saying you have to go change all your IEPs right now. Just this year, as you're writing them, let's be more mindful about specific to that student. The next one is describe the anticipated effects of the student's participation in the general education curriculum. A lot of times we get this backwards. I've seen quite a bit. Lori and I were talking about this. So you want to indicate strengths and the anticipated effects. So Sally is really good in math. So, or let's say Sally's a good reader, so that will help her with math, maybe word problems or reading directions, things like that. Sometimes we focus on the needs of the student in this statement. Okay, moving on down, the educational needs. Please, on this area, you want to indicate the areas of educational need as a result of the student's disability, which may require your special education services, maybe related services, supplementary aids, supports for school personnel, or program modifications. We see this quite a bit. Maybe when the child was in first grade, their education needs were fluency, let's say, and we've never addressed it annually. So now the child's in 8th grade and we still have reading fluency marked, but we're not working on reading fluency. So you want to make sure you're looking at this, you're updating this one as well, and it may not change for that student. I'm not saying you have to change it. It's just you want to be mindful when you're writing an IEP to make sure you're looking at each part of the IEP annually. Okay, because this is what it wants. We want our IEP all to flow together. So we see on this, Johnny, his educational need, as you see, is math problem solving. Fabulous. So you would think that Johnny is going to be served in math. No, Johnny's being served in written expression, and his goal is listening comprehension. I'm not saying any of these are bad, but see how it doesn't flow? If Johnny does have a weakness in written expression and listening comprehension, we need to mark it up here as an educational need. If we say the educational need is math problem solving, then I would assume we are working on math problem solving somewhere in this IEP. So we want to make sure that all of this flows and it all matches. That is one thing for when we're looking at IEPs, we look at that. You're telling me he needs math problem solving. That's a need for him. Then I should see it somewhere in the IEP that you're working on math problem solving. If Johnny is getting direct instruction in English, then that probably tells me somewhere there's a weakness in English that we need to work on. So I should see it up there in the educational needs. So we just want to make sure that it all flows together for the IEP for the student. Okay, now we're moving on to our Special Factors tab. In EdPlan, this is what it looks like. I know if you've done an IEP, you know that when you do a draft, that it opens up like this. We did this on purpose. That way, for during the IEP meeting, you can actually go over each one of these questions. I know sometimes we get into a habit of saying no, 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 and we just move on. You want to be mindful during each IEP, you're actually asking these questions. Does the student have communication needs? Is the student deaf or hard of hearing? Has the team determined that assistive technology is necessary? You want to be having those questions. We see this, or I see this a lot actually, when it comes to behavior. Does the student's behavior impede his or her learning? That's up to the team, but you want to make sure if it does, have we addressed it in either an FBA, a functional behavior assessment, a behavior intervention plan, maybe some accommodations, goals and objectives. You can put any of those in place, but if you mark it here on number 6 that you're going to put goals for behavior, make sure you go to the goal page and put a goal for behavior. Make sure we are all flowing and it all matches. And for any reason marked yes, our services required in the IEP. For the first question, limited English proficiency, that's what you would address if you have a student maybe who speaks a different language. Do you need services to address that language? If you have a student who is blind or visually impaired, do they need Braille? That's up to the team to decide. Is that appropriate for that student? For communication needs, I get this question, so I have a student who's in speech, do I need to mark it here? Well, that's where the team has got to sit down and discuss that. Usually you see it here if you have a student who cannot communicate their wants and needs maybe. Maybe they have to use a picture exchange system, communication device, switches, sign language, any kind of device that helps a student communicate their wants and needs. That's where you will address it here. If you are not sure, that's where you and the speech path and the team, when you get to that question, actually ask, does the student need a particular device or service to address his communication needs? There's no really black and white answer, so that's where you're really going to have to work with your speech paths and the team to decide if you need to mark it here. Now, if you have a student who is deaf or hard of hearing and they use maybe sign language or a communication device of something, then you probably would list it here. But like I said, it's a team decision and it's based on that student and what that particular student needs. Behavior, does the student need strategies, including positive behavioral intervention supports and other strategies to address behaviors that impede the student's learning? We get this question, how do I know if it's impeding their learning? Unfortunately, there's no black or white answer for that one either. That's where the team is going to have to look. How many office referrals has the student had? How many suspensions, expulsions? How many times is he removed from the gen ed classroom over and over? If it's becoming quite a bit or even a lot, then I would say it probably is impeding. But that's where, once again, you and the team are going to have to talk about this. And does the student need a behavior intervention plan? That's some kids do. Some children do well with accommodations and maybe some goals you're working on for social skills or something. But some of our students have and do need behavior plans. I will tell you, please, if you do have a student that needs a behavior plan, make sure in Ed Plan you are uploading those. We have children moving quite a bit, and it says on that question 6 that they do have a behavior intervention plan, but yet we can't find it anywhere in the IEP or attached to the IEP or in the document section. So make sure if you do write a behavior intervention plan, you're uploading it and you're getting it in there with that IEP so everyone knows. Assistive technology, I talked to Able Tech yesterday. They are phenomenal. Does the student need an assistive technology device or service? If you have any kind of questions about that, and remember, assistive technology isn't always just a computer. It could be a pencil grip. It could be a anything that student needs to be successful. I highly recommend you reach out to Able Tech and talk to them. Right above in EdPlan, there's a link for their website. Click on it. It can answer questions. Call them, because you may never can tell. There may be a device or something little that the student can use that would help them be more successful. So that's something where the team needs to talk about it. And like I said, Able Tech is amazing about answering those questions. Feel free to call them. They have a website you can go to and kind of look around. But don't just automatically, no. Really take a look, spend time, see, does that student need something to help them be successful? Parent concerns. This is always it's kind of hard, and I want you to put yourself in a parent's shoe. So you are a parent, you're coming to your students or your child's IEP, and you have 5 people staring at you. You have a OT, PT, speech, you have the special ed director, you have the principal, you have the SPED teacher, you have the gen ed teacher all looking at you to answer, what is your concern? What do you want? That can be very, very overwhelming for a parent. So you may want to call the parent the night before. Hey, we're having Johnny's IEP meeting tomorrow. I need you to write down all your concerns, and we will address them tomorrow during the IEP meeting. That way you don't get flustered or embarrassed. So make sure you are letting the parents know. And a lot of times parents don't know what to say. So you can ask them, do you have any academic concerns? Do you have behavior concerns? Performance on goals? Other relevant information? Anything. Also, I want to remind you, if a parent says their concern is their child's not reading on grade level, I want you to make sure at the end of the IEP, you go back and say, okay, Mr. Smith, we addressed your concern was Johnny's not reading on grade level. We have accommodations, we have services, and we have goals to address that. So we are going to address all your concerns in this IEP. Now, I know it's time-consuming, and I know you're saying, I'm busy, I don't have time, but I'm telling you this, when parents feel rushed or overlooked or not heard in an IEP, they call us at the State Department very upset. We get them calm, we call you guys then have to call the parent back. So just take that extra step, and I know I've been a teacher, but just make sure you're getting those parents' voices heard. They may have numerous questions about why their child acts this way. What do they do? What do this, and they're coming at you with a lot of questions. So you want to make sure you don't rush them. Don't say, well, I've got to go to my hair appointment. I don't have time to talk about this, because once again, they will call us upset. So just make sure you take the time in the IEP to discuss whatever concerns the parent has. Now in EdPlan, I know for a fact no parent in the state of Oklahoma has said period is my concern for my student. I want you guys to make sure you are not putting periods in there. And before you say anything to me, you can print a draft with as many errors as you want. It will just tell you you've left it blank. Fine. You print it out. You go to that IEP meeting with that draft. You fill it in, what the parent concern was, and then you come back into EdPlan and you type it in exactly like the parent said, and then finalize it. We are seeing this more and more. No, stop putting periods in there. Actually put what the parent's concern is. I put this as just a reminder for us. Sometimes we as teachers, we're the expertise in education, and sometimes we get kind of overwhelmed, and sometimes when parents are coming at us with questions, we want to answer or fix it. But you have to remember that sometimes the biggest communication problem is we don't listen to understand, we listen to reply. I know a lot of times it is hard on teachers, and we want to hurry up, and you've talked to that parent 15 times. But if you just sit down and you kind of explain to them, I understand totally, that goes a long way with some of our parents. This was a good one. Parents' concerns would be good information to put in the invitation to meeting. That's a great idea. That way they can think about it. You might say, here we're meeting, in 2 weeks on August 5th. Please make sure you come with some concerns if you have any. If a parent says, I have no concerns at this time, I always give them time. Okay, well, do you want to think about it, or did we address everything? Just make sure you're putting something in that before you finalize it. That's what will get you more when there's nothing in there or a period. My little bird. Okay, this is our main number. If you have any specific questions about certain topics, if you call that number and say, I have a question about autism or deafblind or an IEP, ed plan, anything like that. If you have a specific question, our people can get you to the right person who can answer that question. So a lot of times we each have our own kind of specialty. So if you don't know who to call, if you call this number, they can usually direct you to the right person. And I just want to reiterate, I know you guys are super busy and you all are fabulous out there, but make sure during an IEP you take the time to go over it and you talk to the parents, you talk to the other IEP team members, and you take your time. That will actually save you time in the long run, so you don't have to go over it again. And that's it. Looks like I'm a little early. Yes, so all of our webinars, we had a question, are the webinars archived somewhere? All of the webinars thus far are on the main menu page of EdPlan. Down at the bottom under the State tab, you will find the PowerPoint and then the link to the video. Gary usually gets those to us today, so I can post it usually today or tomorrow. I'll get them posted for this one. So yeah, just check under that State tab in EdPlan, and that's where you will see all of these webinars. Are there any other questions about special factors? When we go to the meeting with a draft and the team members sign the draft copy, what is the best practice policy once the IEP is finalized? So you will finalize that, and then you will attach the finalized copy with those signature pages, but you upload it. I say when you keep the paper file, you want to keep the signatures with the draft, because that's what was at the IEP meeting. That's what everybody signed and agreed upon. Sometimes we've had parents who want a copy of both just to make sure you put in everything correctly, and that's perfectly fine. But you will still upload those signature pages to EdPlan. But as far as like your paper copies that you keep your paper folders, I would always keep the draft that you made the marks on with the signature page together, because that's what the document was at the IEP meeting. Anything else? The question was, do we need to print off a finalized one? That's totally up to a school district if you want to do that. You don't have to, but some districts want you to, just to show that it does match. So that's totally up to each school district on that one. Okay, anything else before we sign off? And if you have teachers who missed this one, we'll be having another one at 11:45. You can go and sign up for it and get the link to sign up to the 11:45 one. It'll be the exact same as this one. What happens if we have less or more pages in the finalized copy? I don't really understand that question, Christy, but if you want to call me, we can talk about it. Okay, if that's it, then we'll see you in 2 weeks for our next one, or in 15 minutes for the same one. Have a great day, guys.